question is that the motion be agreed to. I call Porter Williams.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, we have not been supportive of this bill for some very good reasons. Public safety and public protection are the core function of the police, and the police need to be resourced to do so. And our argument, Mr. Speaker, is that in this case, we believe that the police should be supported to, should be resourced to support those groups who seek to have information provided to them about potential candidates who are coming to work in their workplace, particularly if those organisations are working with vulnerable populations, Mr. Speaker. The core arguments that we have against this particular piece of legislation are around the issue of what is a core service for the police, what is a demand service, and what is actually private benefit. And in the case of vetting for NGOs who may work with children, with the elderly, with other vulnerable populations such as the disabled, we see that it is actually a core service of the police to be that initial screen, that initial safety barrier, Mr. Speaker, when we are looking at those people who are going to work in these particular areas. The discussion around private benefit versus public interest is one that we shouldn't disregard. The arguments that were presented at the Select Committee were this, that the public interest of ensuring a safe and credible workforce to work with children, to work with the elderly, actually far outweighed what might be determined as private benefit. That is the ability to secure work by having a police check completed, clearing you to work in that workplace. So we feel very strongly that the public interest in this, and that ensuring that we have a workforce that is safe to work with children, with the elderly and with the disabled, far outweighs the arguments that the National Party were giving us in regards to private benefit. When the bill was first introduced, it was thought that those groups who would first have costs recovered from them would be such groups such as concert promoters, those who were providing concerts or music and were actually going to make a profit from those particular ventures. When you think of the amount of manpower that goes into supporting the safety of people attending those kinds of concerts, we thought that that actually had some merit, and we were supportive of the bill when it first came to the House for those reasons. It actually took us by complete surprise, as it did many members of the NGO sector and the community and voluntary sector, that what actually transpired was that they would be the ones that would be impacted by this particular piece of legislation. The user pay system, Mr. Speaker, with the user pay system, the officials didn't disclose what other services might be charged for. So we might be starting with police checks and police vetting, but could this extend perhaps to the recovery of one's stolen property? We have not actually been given any assurances of how far the user pay system will go. With regards to the community and voluntary sector, they were very vocal in their opposition to this particular legislation, and I want to commend them for their efforts to lobby those members, such as the Honourable Peter Dunn and the members of the Māori Party, to demonstrate that actually what is occurring here is that the NGO sector, which receives its money through donation, through philanthropic trusts and through government contract, actually is going to be moving that money directly into supporting the resources of the police. And that's actually not a good use of their resources. So they are taking resources that they would normally be using for supporting the people and the causes that they care about directly into the bottom line of the police budget. when actually what should happen is that the police should be resourced to do their work properly. At the heart of our argument is really around what the police are resourced to do. When the discussion came to the Select Committee about what charge would be imposed upon individuals wanting to get their police checks completed, the discussion was at a level of about $7. But during the examination of what occurs in other jurisdictions, particularly in Australia, individuals could be looking at a charge of about $50 each. Where there are high levels of police requests for police to undertake these checks. And we know that eventually the nominal sum of $7 will increase. There is no doubt about that. But we don't see the value in charging individuals who are going to work in a relatively low-paid NGO environment, supporting children, supporting the elderly and the disabled, why they should actually be the ones to bear the brunt of these charges. The other groups that are potentially involved in this, and the SOPs that have been put up by David Clendon and by Chris Hipkins speak to this specifically, are teachers in schools and the ECE. So here again we are looking at a group of people who are actually at the heart of keeping our children safe and educated, having to bear the brunt of under-resourcing of the police. Mr Speaker, I would be hopeful that the government members would support the SOP in my name, which would look to exempt the registered charities, and I'm heartened to hear that the Minister is considering that that may be part of regulation. But I say to the Minister, actually what you should do is you should put that in the piece of legislation. That should appear in the legislation. The Minister has indicated that there might be some determination about waivers and exemptions. That should actually be up front, rather than allowing the Commissioner to make those determinations on an individual basis. It would be far better to actually make the statement that registered charities are exempt, registered teachers are exempt, and early childhood education centres are also exempt of the charges. It does come down, Mr Speaker, to the fact that the police need to be resourced to do what they do. That a demand service in this case should not be impacting on people who actually want to do a good job in keeping our children and the elderly safe. That at the end of the day, private benefit does not, in this case, outweigh what is in the best interests of the public. And that it's for these reasons that we don't support this legislation. We don't believe it's been well thought through, and we think it's unclear and unfair in its impact, and it represents an extremely dangerous new direction in charging for police basic services, and we oppose this bill, Mr Speaker.